Star Wars' much-hated Jar Jar Binks was originally much better in the first draft of Star Wars: The Phantom Menace. Jar Jar Binks almost immediately proved hugely unpopular with Star Wars audiences, leading creator George Lucas to observe that those same viewers were uncomfortable about admitting that the franchise is primarily for children. But before we head over to Naboo, apologies again for the voice. I still have what seems like the plague. But I'd also like to say hello guys and gals, I'm Nick, and welcome to Firthy's Feedback. So, to the delight of his critics, the subsequent films in the Star Wars prequel trilogy reduced Jar Jar's screen time, but he wasn't always intended to be as cartoonish as he ended up. The original Phantom Menace draft presented a more toned-down version of Jar Jar. The original script was summarised in the Episode 1 Insider's Guide, a 1999 CD-ROM that presented a copy of the final Phantom Menace script, annotated with all the differences from the first draft. These annotations gave Star Wars fans a sense of the character that Jar Jar Binks could have been, and it's an improvement on what they got when the film was released in theatres. George Lucas decided to amplify the more physical aspects of Jar Jar's character after Ahmed Best was cast in the role. Best had caught the attention of Phantom Menace casting director Robin Gurland, who was impressed by the actor's athleticism. However, Lucas wanted Jar Jar to be less athletic and more awkward and lanky, hoping that this silliness would appeal to the kids in the audience. Phantom Menace star Ahmed Best told Vice in 2015 that Lucas wanted Jar Jar to be like the silent movie comedian and filmmaker Buster Keaton. However, Keaton was known for his deadpan face, something which was miles away from Jar Jar's wackiness and unique speech patterns. Because Jar Jar was to be the first purely CGI character in Star Wars history, Lucas was clearly keen to make him memorable, much as Yoda had been. Lucas conceived of Jar Jar's memorable loose-limbed walk, and there's footage in the making of the documentary of him demonstrating it for Best. Lucas believed that, as Jar Jar had been banished from his underwater home for being hapless and clumsy, therefore he would be even more hapless and clumsy on land. Despite Lucas's assurances that kids would love Jar Jar, this hapless and clumsy version of the character failed to replicate the success of Lucas's backwards talking Yoda. In the original draft of The Phantom Menace, Jar Jar was childlike rather than childish. He is essentially a frightened child, thrown into extraordinary circumstances when he's recruited to aid Obi-Wan Kenobi in navigating the core to warn Naboo about the impending invasion. Ahmed Best was drawn to the childlike nature of the character and saw Jar Jar as someone who was struggling to fit in. This innocence and isolation definitely come across in the more childlike character present in the superior Phantom Menace draft. Had Lucas instead focused on that, rather than the physical comedy and over-the-top speech patterns of the character, he may have found that Jar Jar resonated more successfully with audiences of Star Wars: The Phantom Menace. Personally, if the theory that Binks was a Sith Lord would have played out across the three films, I think it would have been much better storytelling, and the prequels wouldn't have got the mixed reviews they did. What do you guys think? Did you like Jar Jar? Would you have preferred him to be a Sith or a less wacky character in the prequels? Let me know below.